Hello and welcome back to A Splash of Paint. Now it gives me great pleasure to welcome first-time guest, personal friend and professional artist Geoff Kersey for part one of today's Try Your Hand At, painting a watercolour landscape project.
Thanks, Matthew. So here's today's painting. I've drawn it out in a 2B pencil. I've put some masking fluid on. I'll explain a bit more about why I've put the masking fluid where I have as it progresses. I've mixed some colours, which I shall explain what those colours are as I paint along. So the very first thing to do now is to get a natural sponge full of clean water, and I'm going to wet the whole of the background where this woodland is, with a glimpse of sky through it. More or less the top 2/3 of the whole piece of paper. I find a good tip with this is to look at it sideways on at the shine on the paper, because you can't be sure if you've got every little bit, and a dry patch emerging out of the middle as I paint would be unfortunate. Okay, now can't lose any time. As soon as I've wet that background, I've got to get in with the paint. So I'm starting off with a thin wash of cobalt blue and rose madder. There isn't much sky on show in this scene, but there is a glimpse of it at the top there, so putting a little bit of that on. I can leave a few little patches of white paper to suggest a bit of cloud. Maybe add a touch more water, keep it nice and wet. And then I'm washing that brush, and it's a large number 16 round, the brush I'm using, so I can get plenty of painting. And then I'm going to put this lemon yellow in. This wooded area is really brightly lit, it's really catching the sunshine, and where it's at its brightest, it's more yellow than green, and that's why I've gone for this bright mixture of just lemon yellow and water. And when that lemon yellow gets into the blue at the top, it goes slightly green. And that doesn't matter, of course, because it's a woodland in the summer and there's lots of green around. I'm now picking up, with the same brush, a mixture of Oriolin and cobalt blue. A nice bright summer green. And we'll put a bit of this in as well. Working very much wet into wet, so that the colours mix and merge in the background. Not trying to paint actual trees or actual foliage at the moment, just getting a sort of impression. Tighten it up with a bit more detail towards the end. Okay, a bit more of that green, I think. That's the Oriolin and cobalt blue. Now I'm going to transfer to a different brush, and I've got a mixture of manganese violet and cerulean blue, a sort of cool purpley grey colour. And because I want a bit of cooler colour in the background, I'm going to drop some of this in behind this ruined building here and in the lower part of the woods. Okay, I want a bit of darker green, and here I've mixed some viridian and manganese violet. Because the manganese violet has red in it, which is opposite to the green, it kills off that bright emerald in the viridian and gives us a sort of cool grey green. Maybe a little touch there. Again, behind the ruined building there. Okay, now I think what I'll do is put a bit more lemon yellow in, maybe a little touch stronger this time, just lemon yellow and water, and let's get a little bit more brightness around that middle there. Still working wet into wet. Notice I use the side of the brush. I hold my brush with my thumb at one side of the handle and 4 fingers at the other, so that the side of the brush is skidding across the paper, and then you don't get these little points or dots. It's freer. Well, I'm running a little bit low of that dark green, so I'm just going to mix some more viridian and manganese violet. Plenty of the violet in to keep it a cool grey green. And I'll put a bit more of that around the base here. That will give us a contrast with the light on the middle distance and foreground later on. And of course with the light on the building there. Okay, clean the brush. A bit more to do, and I need to move quickly because all of this depends on the background still being damp. A bit more of the grey green, I think. And I think a touch more lemon yellow that real bit of brightness. And just to add a little bit of relief from all this green, I'm just going to take a little touch of raw sienna and burnt sienna, a sort of orangey colour, a colour you'd probably more associate with autumn. And of course this obviously isn't autumn, but I think it just gives us a bit of relief from all the mass of green, and maybe a touch of it around there, and maybe a little bit behind the building there. Now as this is starting to dry now, I can go back to the bright green colour, the Oriolan and cobalt blue, and make some marks now with a fairly dry brush to indicate the foliage at the top here. And now that the paper's drier, this won't soften, it'll make more broken marks like that around the top there to suggest all the thousands of little leaves without me having to actually paint them. A bit more work around there. So while that background's drying, I'm going to get a smaller brush, so number 4, and mix some colours for the trees. Some of the trees are further away in the distance, so I want more of a grey colour. And I've got cobalt blue and rose madder, just like the colour I put in the sky right at the beginning, but I'm going to grey it slightly by adding a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm then going to take a brush called a liner writer. This is a bit like a rigger, but not quite as long, and it's more pointed at the tip, and start to paint some of these thinner, more distant trees. So now that the background's dry enough, I'm going to take this liner writer brush and start a few distant trees. Plenty of small branches from them. The beauty of this brush is it gives you really fine, delicate branch work, and it doesn't keep running out of paint. Okay, let's make a tree look a little bit further away. I'm going to add a bit of water to that grey colour. That's the beauty of watercolour. Just by adding a little bit of water and lightening the tone, something can look further away and give us that all-important feeling of distance. Let's put one about here. Must be careful as well to position them in lots of different places so they look random rather than a row of trees. I think we'll have to try to get one really misty and distant, as though it's really a long way back. So I've added a lot of water. This is probably more water than paint. Let's put another one of those maybe there. Very watery mixture for these. As the brush gets a bit drier, the rough texture of the paper breaks up the line, but I don't mind that. I don't mind that because it can give you, it can suggest that your view of it is partly obscured by leaves. Right, another stronger one. I'm going to add a bit of cobalt blue and burnt sienna to that mixture. Thicken it up a bit, and let's put one in a little bit closer. But I don't need many more trees because it's a fine line sometimes between enough trees and too many. And maybe with that mixture, let's have just one more. And some of that branch work can disappear behind the tree that's still got masking fluid on it. And another light one there. So that's it, we're about halfway through the painting. It does need a bit of drying time, so I'll see you later in the programme.
It's always a delight to see Geoff in action, and we look forward to seeing part 2 later on in today's programme. But before we take a little break, folks, I'm just going to show you how to paint a little tiny boat in watercolours. We did this sketch a few weeks ago in the episode, and I thought it'd be nice to actually put some paint on it. It's a nice common thing to do. Any object like this in a watercolour painting, whether it's a boat sailing or whether it's a little fence post, any object that's got a sense of scale to it is great for your painting because it does give that sense of scale. So the boat is basically made up of shadows, which is quite straightforward to do really. So the main colour is going to be natural grey, which is a pre-mixed shadow colour anyway, so it makes life a little bit easier for us. So we're just going to use some natural grey, size 6 round brush for this. And I'll use this to put some tonal work on the boat. You can mix natural grey from a blue, a red and a yellow. That's primary colours. Equal parts of those three will give you this colour. Try and avoid using Payne's grey, a little bit too black for shadows. I'm just going to go straight in with a size 6 brush. And I'm going to put in the back of the boat. I'm not very good on the technical terms. I'm just going to put the back of it in. And we're just going to work across. It's almost like a bowl shape, I guess you could say, for this really. And it's almost like an outline. That's the darker side. And then also at the same time as doing this shadow, I'm going to drop in the one that goes along the bottom of the hull. I think that's what they call that part of the boat there. And then go up to the point and then make it slightly heavier at the top, slightly thicker at the top. Then we'll clean the brush, give it a little wipe on tissue so it's not soaking, and then just use the little point of the brush just to soften in the actual shadows until they meet in the middle. It's very easy to do this because natural grey is not a permanent colour, so it's easy to work with. And then we'll do the same with this. Just going to get it all blending and softening in. And this curved shadow will make it look as though it's like a bowl shape going underneath, which is quite important for the boat there. It gives you that natural curve. And it gives you the light versus dark area. So a light side over this side, but then dark at the back. So it's giving you already a bit of a 3D feel going off there. And then we'll paint in the side of the cabin there. Again, using the nice point of the brush. Just going to bring it over on the two sides. Clean the brush, wipe it on tissue again, and then just use the point of the brush. If you find that your brush is losing its point, just rotate it through the colour as you pick it up. It will get the point back, because eventually brushes, of course, do wear out. Especially a brush of this size, a size 6, because it's such a common brush to paint with. And as it starts to round off, you just need to replace it. It's as simple as that. But it should last many, many years. And then I want to darken the side of the flat piece of the cabin there. Just bringing that down a little bit. And then bring it across, because I need to get the depth inside the boat. There we go. Clean brush. Wipe on tissue so it's almost dry. Just damp, and then just pull that away so it's more blending. It's thinking about light and dark shades all the time. Sometimes you need to have a double dose in the water and the tissue. There we go, so we're starting to see how it's looking like a 3D object just by putting shadows. This is kind of monochrome, just using one colour all the way through. I need to go a bit darker, so I want to thicken the colours up, and then we need to pull some darkness just right at the little pointy tip just there. That's quite an important little shadow there. And also I've put a little man there, he needs a shadow. And I'm using a very thick dark colour to go at the side of him, and also down the back of the cabin there. And just a little bit on that corner as well would be nice there. So that's the far side of the boat. Clean the brush again, wipe it on the tissue, because I just want to use this little edge just to lightly come around that corner so we can see the boat there. We can add a few other bits like the doorway. I'll put little bits of detail around the back of the boat there, even just a couple of little markings to represent a bit of detail in. And of course it wants a little bit of a reflection and a bit of movement in the water, like we all do. And a bit of a weight coming out the back of the boat there. Clean brush again, wipe it on tissue, use it as a blending tool. So that's placed it kind of placed it in the water there for you and given the movement as well. Very quickly going to use some lemon yellow and some cadmium red, and that will give us a lovely vivid orange colour. Then let's paint in the actual sail on this nice bright orange, as you can see. We'll go up there, up towards the point and across the bottom of the sail. And then clean brush again, wipe it on tissue, same routine as always, and then just blend away, pulling it over, making it lighter as it comes towards the tip. If you squeeze your brush through your fingers, you can lay the brush flat. I don't know whether you can see this, squeeze and wipe, which sounds quite interesting, and that will just give you a few creases, folds in the sail. I'm just going to add a little bit in the water, very pale version of the same orange, just to give a bit of a reflection. That's quite important there. There we go, so you can see it's catching it. And then finishing touch is a rigger brush and some natural grey. I'll pop a bit of burnt sienna with the grey so it goes like a brownie colour, and that will just give us the mast and the person as well. So I'll bring that up there. Let's put that a bit of interesting detail on the boat there. I'd expect to see one or two little ropes and things, bits of rigging coming down these areas. I'm just going to paint in this fella. There he is. Looks like he's nodded off actually. Just going to get a bit of brighter colour there just to put him in at the back. And really, apart from adding a bit of a drop to the bottom of the boat, I think that's pretty much a very simple and effective and quick way of painting a little boat in your picture. It can give fantastic life to any seascape or any sort of river scene. And there you go folks, give it a go. Okay, it's time now for a little break folks, but join us in part 3 when renowned watercolour artist Geoff Kersey returns to put the final finishing touches to today's Try Your Hand At project. An SAA professional artist, Chipp, reveals how simple it is to keep your mixed acrylic paints moist and fresh. We'll see you after the break.